So, one of the incredible and glorious things about this life that so often gets missed is that life itself is the way. We can get caught up in ideas of the spiritual as a conceptual way of transcending or trying to get away from life and trying to build a spiritual life that is essentially a conceptual idea, which is, it can be like a protection, like a glass house, right? And what we really come to discover in this unfolding is that wholeness has to include it all, that life is all encompassing. And actually, it's through the integrated living of life that we really truly come to know the divine. That actually, this is the divine way that has been incredibly and profoundly, intelligently set up, is that life itself is the way. Really, all we are ever being asked is to turn to God, turn to love, turn to the frequency of our longing, and then just leave the rest up to God. Leave the rest up to love, leave the rest up to the divine. And in a way, stop tinkering, right? Stop trying to control, stop moving in the ways that create a barrier to being one with the divine, being one with innocence, being one with purity. And so there's such an incredibly beautiful simplicity when this truly dawns. And yet the dawning of it can take a lot, because we can be so habituated to be in kind of a discordant frequency of what spirituality is. Spirituality can come with quite a heaping load side order of righteousness, right? and that righteousness actually is a protection. It's what can keep us divided. And that's why reality is where we can't hide. Reality is this moment just as it is. No hiding, everything including. Whereas within the realms of spirituality, there's plenty of sneaky little hiding places where our righteousness can take over. And of course, that's been my experience. I have totally got caught in those sneaky little righteous hiding places. So speaking from experience, right? And then we smile because there's a recognition. And then maybe in our spiritual glass house and in our frequency of righteousness, we start saying, well, my spiritual life and the rest of my life that kind of gets in the way of my spiritual life, all of the people that are not doing the work, all of the ones that are not spiritual, right? And we're just creating more and more layers of division, right? We're cotton padding ourselves in this glass house and these big righteous ideas of how spiritual we are, and not realizing how we're actually creating division. Whereas, let's say, true spirituality in its absolute sense is about remembering that the spirit is one, and the spirit is wild, and the spirit is free, and the spirit is innocent, and that there is no division. And so it's not that our spiritual lives and our spiritual practices don't offer us plenty. Of course they do. They offer us the possibility of being able to come to a sense of presence and to abide in a presence. They refine the nervous system and bring us a deepening of refinement of the nervous system, abilities to witness and to open to finer frequencies, for sure. But if we bring along with that this righteousness and these ideas that we're somehow elevated, or this is better, or we just notice quite simply that your lived experience has some kind of division in it, then that's this glorious opportunity to undivide the lived experience. One of the great protective measures within the realms and the ideas of conceptual spirituality is that we're opening to something. We want to awaken. We want to be enlightened. We want to reach the goal. We want to reach the top of the mountain, right? And we don't want all of the more mundane parts of life. We want to get away from that. We want to reach this conceptual crest. And yet in that, there's so much concept and so much conditioning and so much division, which is part of the great discordant frequency of Kali Yuga, where spirituality itself is corrupt and distorted. It's part of the whole age of Kali Yuga and the great imbalance of the collective. And in that imbalance, all of those ideas are embedded in the frequency of imbalance. So what if our great goal is not to reach some kind of conceptual idea of achieving something, which you can just feel is the imbalanced masculine, right? It's this idea of achieving a goal, of getting somewhere, being seen, being successful. And what if what it's truly about is yielding to God, yielding to love, and actually coming to a deeper and more intuitive, mystical, receptive way of being, where there's an open embracing, including an acceptance of the whole of life as being God, as being one, and that what true, we could say, if we want to use the words of enlightenment, that what true enlightenment isn't about ascending and creating righteous ideas that are elevated and divisive, but that true enlightenment is realizing that there is only light and that everything is that light. And it's coming to a oneness where there is no second substance. There is nothing other than, right? Love, love, light. That's all there is. It's what we are made of. It's the substance that everything is made of. The whole of creation is an appearance that comes alive as a flow of life out of the substance of love. That's all there is. And so in a way, the lived experience is about recognizing, where am I dividing? Where is their challenge? Where is their intensity? Where is their difficulty? And recognizing that those places in the life are actually the most graced opportunity to live the integrated experience. So it's like when we turn to God, when we turn to love, and we stop trying to use our mental ideas of what we want to achieve, like kind of pushing our way up the mountain and trying to have more spiritual experiences where we feel good about ourselves. And we actually start to embrace the fullness of life. Let's say we embrace the dark places, we embrace the places that feel stressful, the places that feel less than and broken, wounded, hard, that we're actually being invited to embrace it all. And it's in the inclusivity that we discover freedom. It's not in the getting away from. We will never be free if we're trying to get away. That in a way, the most glorious moment of freedom is in the absolute inclusivity of it all. That life is this moment of timeless now, integral wholeness, boundless wow, right? That everything is God, everything is the glory, everything is love. And there's nothing to get away from. There's nothing to be righteous and elevated about, because God is the most humble. God is pure humility. And in oneness with God, there's no one to be achieving and climbing that mountain and, being heroic. That in a way, the heroic journey is about letting go of all of the ideas that we have about ourselves and actually having, let's say, no conceptual agendas or signals to tell us how it should be. That we're not using conceptual markers. That we recognize that conceptual markers, and let's say the conceptual markers, let's be clearer about that. Those are the places of, I have to meditate more, I have to sit more, I have to be in silence. I'm distracting. I'm wrong. I'm not doing it right. Right? So the conceptual markers are all of the ideas that we create about our spiritual life and how it should be and what makes me a good spiritual person and what makes me feel like I'm doing it right. But the one that feels like they're doing it right has an opposite they're trying to get away from, which is the one that feels like they're doing it wrong. Right? And it's the one that feels like they're doing it wrong is the one that we actually need to be sitting with and embracing, right? That trying to be the one that's doing it right is just a mechanism to get away from the one that fears there is something wrong with me, or that I'm doing it wrong, or I'm not good enough, or I'm lacking. So what a great way to just climb that spiritual ladder and to give yourself airs and graces and righteousness, and all of us included. How wonderful it is for all of us, right? What a great conceptual idea, what a great protective idea to climb the spiritual ladder and to really feel like I feel good about myself because I'm a good spiritual person. But what is hiding underneath that? What is the part that is being left behind in the darkness, right? Because that part that's left behind in the darkness will keep playing out in the life, will keep trying to be seen, and will keep popping up and expressing itself in certain situations and challenges in life. It will express itself as body imbalances and physical, disease and challenge. It will pop up and present itself in relationship dynamics and challenges, in family, in friends, in work, right? Those hidden, exiled parts of ourselves will keep popping up and we'll keep saying, oh, golly, my worldly life is just such a distraction from my spiritual life. I'll just sit more, I'll meditate more, I'll do more of the good stuff, and I'll feel better about myself, and I'll have experiences of transcending, and then I'll feel really good in the transcendent state, and I'll feel like a peacefulness that comes when the ego is relaxed, and I'll feel like, okay, now I'm getting somewhere. Now I'm really getting somewhere. And there'll be a relaxation of the ego, and life will seem to be calm for a little while. And then that inner child that's been abandoned and the darkness that's been pushed away will just start to come up again, right? Because that kind of freedom, spiritual freedom that's born out of experience, is not true freedom. It's not true wholeness. It's an experience. It's an experience that's making the ego feel good. And when the ego feels good, it relaxes. Ah, phew, I got away from the one that does it wrong. I got away from the one that is having challenges. And so for a short while, it will feel like, oh, everything's beautiful now. Everything's beautiful now. But if things start to pop in again, it's because there's not a complete reconciliation. And where the reconciliation is not in climbing the ladder and trying to abide in the transcendent field and feeling righteous and good about myself. It's actually about reclaiming the parts that have been exiled and avoided. It's about bringing all of the parts of yourself into the light and bringing all of the parts of yourself to love, so that in the reconciliation of the heart, the discovery is that there's one heart of wholeness, and the frequency of the heart of wholeness is a love that's all-embracing, welcoming, all-inclusive. It's the simple technology of love. And love is God's love. Love is God, right? So here we could speak about the incredible template that Yeshua brought forward as the first child of God, as the Son of God. The child of God shows us that we are children of God. Yeshua was never bringing a teaching that I am the child of God and you are not, right? Yeshua was never pedestaling himself. Yeshua was saying, we are children of God. We are of God. We are made in the image of God. And all that God is asking is for us to turn to God and to open to the field of love, that when you love God, God loves you. It's the same love. And when you love God and you say yes to God as a frequency field of love, of innocence, of openness, that then God's kind, all-embracing love touches every part of you in your field. And you start to open that the field of love is a field of the miraculous. It's the field of magic. It's the field where you don't need to fix and change, and you don't actually even need to conceptually climb any ladders. You just are being invited to be a field of openness that's saying yes to the deepest longing of the heart. And whether that longing feels like you're saying yes to God, the Divine Mother, love, truth, Shiva, Krishna, Allah, Muhammad, whatever, right? Yahweh, it doesn't matter, because all of the names of God are pointing to the nameless, to the light, to the one, right? To pure divinity. And in our human lived experience, pointing to original innocence, right? So our human lived experience is this extraordinary possibility that we make so complicated, but is actually mapped out as being incredibly simple. One of the great mysteries of the Western world is that the great mystic, Yeshua, right? We're not speaking of Christianity here. No, the Christ light was not a Christian, right? Didn't create Christianity. The Christ light is the pure light of every heart. We are all the Christ right now, right? The Christ is born in your heart in a moment of revelation. When we are in the frequency of love, the frequency of God, we're in the wide open revelatory field, and the Christ is born, right? And this is all that Yeshua was ever sharing, right? Yeshua was a human being, a divine human, just as we are, right? Christianity has elevated and misinterpreted a lot. Innocently so, right? But when we really come to the roots and bones of the wisdom heart of the Christ light, the pure consciousness, what we discover is not a teaching, but we discover a frequency, a frequency field that is a frequency of love, of God, of the glory, and it's a unified field. And it matters not by which name we call it. The languaging doesn't matter. And that's where the mystical revelation is an open field that allows every kind of languaging to be included, because it's not about a description or an explanation. It's about a frequency, a vibratory field. And what we are being invited into is that vibratory field, and to live at the frequency of reality, of constant revelation, where we are not landing anywhere and we're not trying to fix and change and control, but we're open as a revelatory field to keep deepening and deepening and refining our knowing of what we are, and that there are no ladders to climb, that the refinement happens in the frequency field of love. And so spirituality itself can be, and very widely is, a hiding place within the collective consciousness. And it's through this willingness, this has been my experience, it's through the willingness to keep questioning, to not rest in the very, very sticky revelation of having achieved something, of having got somewhere, and the very deeply held longing to be seen, right? Very, very sticky, the longing to be seen, the longing for fame, the longing to be understood. That in the true revelation, it matters not whether we are seen or unseen, whether we're understood or misunderstood. It doesn't matter, because the revelation and the revelatory field, the mystical revelatory field, is a field where there's an ever fresh frequency of knowing of the being that is, that you are, that we are, that we don't need an external permission, that there's an autonomy in this knowing that is just the song of the hearts and the field of grace. And it's ever deepening, and it ever deepens as we say yes to the glory, and as we start shifting from the frequency of fear and the great imbalance of the collective that is rooted in fear and trying to fix and problem solve and trying to climb the ladder so that I can be successful, that I can do good, I can be good, instead of opening to the essential goodness and glory of what God is, right? So there are many means that God gives us. There are many means that the Divine Mother, Divine Father, the glory, the light gives us. And it's not that following a spiritual path isn't incredibly profound, but it's so important to keep checking and questioning everything, and to catch the places where there's division. Because where there's division, there's an opportunity to undivide. Where do you feel limited? Where are you righteous? Where is there a sense of a divide between your life and the world, your spiritual life and your worldly life? And can you play that edge with open curiosity that says, show me what I cannot see here. Show me why there's a sense of division here. How am I creating this division, right? Because there's also this great projection where we're like, wow, you know, they're not doing their work. They're not doing their work. They're not spiritual, right? This great kind of judgment. And all of that kind of judgment comes out of a deep-rooted, get this is really good, this one. It comes out of a deep-rooted need to be seen, right? They're not seeing me. I'm not seen. That deep-rooted need to be seen is so sticky. I'm not being seen by my family. They don't see me. They don't see how spiritual I am. So then the projection, well, they're not doing their work, right? Whereas if you don't need to be seen and you just start seeing from the frequency of love, if you're truly seeing from the frequency of the undivided, you just see the beauty. You just see at the frequency of love. And you don't need for anyone to be any different. You just love. And actually, your ability is to just really illuminate the brilliance and beauty of your loved ones, to be the seer and not need to be the seen, right? Not need to be seen. To be the seer is to be Shiva, right? Is to be the glory of the great seer, the great observer of life. The world, right? Shiva, Brahma, and Vishnu. Shiva is the seer. Brahma is the world, the creation, the appearance. And Vishnu is the flow of consciousness, right? So if we're stuck in the Brahma of, and we're not speaking of Brahman as in of God, we're speaking of this Triputi. In the Triputi, Brahma is the world, is the creation. It's the seen. And if we're stuck wanting to be seen in the worldly, and we're not using the means that we've been given as the Vishnu, the flow of consciousness unifying itself in order to open and awaken to Shiva, right? When we open and awaken, we use the means of Vishnu to open, to be the seer. We've shifted the consciousness from limitation to the unlimited. And we, in that being the seer, we dissolve the Triputi into the absolute one glory of Brahman. We dissolve into the unified heart. We dissolve into the purity of the Divine Mother, right? The integral wholeness. So we're being given the means. Sat Chit Anand, right? In order to reach, again, the Anand, it's the collapse of the Triputi, that we're not just trying to achieve the Sat. We're not just focused upon, I just want that elevation, that we're using the means of the Chit. We're using the means of the flow of consciousness in order to realize the bliss of wholeness, the Sat, the Chit, and the Anand, when it's all present. When it's all present in the lived experience, there's wholeness. And again, the Triputi collapses into the Akhand, right? Or the Purna, right? It collapses. The seeming disparate pieces that are part of the journey collapse into the one. Whatever means we are using, there's this incredible intelligence in what we are being offered. And in the simplicity of human English language and our lived experience, what we're being invited is to come to God. We use, maybe we could say then, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, right? That to come to the Father, that we use the template of the Son and the grace of the Holy Spirit to move us. And then the whole Triputi collapses into one glory, one love, right? So there could be many different subtleties to express what I'm expressing right now. This is just the way that it's coming. Don't take it as gospel. Just receive it as a dance and as a frequency, and just use it if it inspires you for your own exploration. Find your own way to explore, right? But there's so much incredible beauty. And so everything that we're being given, and in a way that how we're drawn into spirituality and spiritual paths and spiritual practices, there's so much grace to it because it enlivens the heart. But if we miss the great opportunity that our heart is being enlivened, and it's not about then creating a concept out of it, it's about following the enlivenment of the heart and recognizing that the enlivenment of the heart is the enlivenment of your knowing. That when your heart is enlivened, when your spirit is enlivened, when your knowing is enlivened, that you're not discovering something outside of you. You're receiving a reflection in the process of intelligence that's showing you your true nature, right? Whether that's in any part of life, whether it's in some kind of seeming teacher, guide, guru, a book, a video, whether it's in a friend or a companion or nature or whatever it's in, wherever you receive that enlivening, where your heart's knowing is on fire, it's a reflection. It's not outside of you. There is nothing outside of you. And this whole unfolding is a glorious inside job. It's about receiving the reflections from the seeming outside and bringing them inside and letting the inner revelation open to a field of mystical, revelatory celebration of your true nature and the oneness with God. And to recognize that the living of life is the way, life is the way. It's the truth, right? Again, I'm not quoting, but I have a sneaking suspicion that Yeshua also said this. I see Kate smiling, so I think that could be true. But I'm not a quoter. I'm not a quoter, right? Things just come into the field. So I speak the wisdom of beings that have walked. You know, we're walking in the footprints. But to walk in the footprints isn't to walk in concept. To walk in the footprints is to receive the grace and be enlivened, to recognize that life is the way, it is the truth, it is reality, it is the one, right? Ananda Mayima spoke of something very similar, that, you know, again, paraphrasing, but the sign of a being that is on the path to self-realization is every human being living their life, right? That a lived human life is the path to self-realization. It's not a path for the special. The whole living of life is it, right? And that's why the most glorious teaching, the mystical teaching, is actually the most simple one, and it's present in all of the great mystics. If you go towards any mystic, saint or sage that you are drawn to, you will find that the revelation at the heart of the sharing is the same, no matter what the language is. And it basically says, only God, turn to God, give yourself to God, keep repeating the name of God, only the Divine Mother, give yourself to the Divine Mother, be in the revelation of the Divine Mother. You are her child, and she will show you only the self, only oneself, no division, nothing else. Stay absolutely true to this revelation. whether you feel like you know it in absolute revelatory frequency or not, stay absolutely true to it, and it will be discovered. That was really what Nisargadatta spoke of, that his guru told him that, and he stayed absolutely sincere to that. Within 3 years, he was in the revelation and sharing that, right? So this is the mystical revelation. And the great glorious grace is that we can follow an infinite multitude of paths and ways. There's no right way and there's no wrong way. That it's absolutely a unique, autonomous unfolding. But what we recognize is that we join in the revelatory field of grace. However deeply we've realized that, we join in our longing, in our celebration, in our joy, in the field of love. We join in companionship to share together the deepening, the unfolding, and the revelation. And my, oh my, it's so joyous, so beautiful to be together and to share this glorious field, right? And to keep deepening and opening, and that every being and their opening is a part of the grace. That the frequency that each being is opening to as we join together becomes an offering to the field of our shared gathering. And then the frequency field of our gathering becomes a reverberant field that transmits and is supporting the whole. And that becomes like a self-sustaining, gloriously nourishing, nectarine, blissful field that we then share together, right? And this is what we are always being invited into. So we can be in whatever spiritual path, whatever teachings bring us alive. We don't have to leave the unique ways that we're enlivened and we're joyful. We can be exactly in whatever we're in, but we recognize that if what we're in divides us, we want to take a look at that. If what we're in gives us a feeling of, I'm better than, or if there's anything in the life that feels difficult or divided or limited, then it's to receive the graced, glorious opportunity. So what we come to realize then is that the field of our gathering isn't a field of a teaching. It's not a field of, this is the way that's right or wrong. It's a frequency field that we join in, and there's no teaching to adhere to. It's all about attuning, and then in the attunement and in the receiving and in the direct experience, your own exploration both is what brings you to an autonomous knowing, is what actually is like an activation and initiatory field where the deepening happens. And then as the deepening happens, we all nourish the field for us all. We give our nectarine bliss frequencies back to God, to the glory, and to the whole. So we are each in like a unique unfolding, and that unique unfolding is a flow of intelligence in a process of refinement and recalibration and ever deepening that is nourishing the whole field within our gathering and wider. So then that goes out to the constellations, and the constellations that are being nourished are the reverberant field of each of us as a point. We have a constellation of friends and family, companions, and community around us that is receiving the frequency upliftment and nourishment of our deepening. So just within our gathering and our sangha, and then for each of us as a point, the constellations start to spread, right? Then those constellations start to spread even wider in these very profound intelligent ways where we are also connected ancestrally. We have ancestral constellations, and we could say, let's call this soul constellations that are just popping up now, which are all the beings that are presently embodied in the human realm, that we may know or not know, but we're connected to by soul connection. It may be like a path crossing for a moment. It may be beings that we've had relationships with or connections with that we're no longer with, or it could be beings that we haven't yet crossed paths with or met with. But those soul connections, like the characters that we are destined to have soul interaction with in this lifetime, are also all affected as we reverberate. And then we could say, of course, then the greatest constellation is the whole of humanity, that the deeper that we open to feel the whole field as one field, and we embrace the fullness of the human predicament, the stress and the suffering, the pain and the joy equally, that as we embrace that in our own life on the micro level, we affect the macro level. And when we allow the macro level of what we see through our own filters as a world play, as we let that macro affect the micro, by cracking our heart open and receiving the feelings of upset and despair and fear and just pain and suffering of the companionship of humanity, depending upon how we see it, because we all see it completely differently through the filters. And that's why the way that we see it and how we receive it and how our filters and the stirrings of the discordance within us, when affected by the macro, gives us this incredible opportunity to use the macro pictures of creation that we are creating and the collective is creating, the collective mind is creating, to then open our hearts and to have the possibility to feel the feelings we wouldn't otherwise get to feel. And of course, this is true whether it's a worldly picture that's stirring the heart or like a seemingly personal picture of life that's stirring the heart. As we receive and allow the feelings to be moved, the unconscious surfaces, and we get to transmute it through the nervous system, and we get to clear and illuminate and recalibrate the systems and release old stresses. And as that happens, we deepen and we deepen. And then the reverberant frequencies within the micro, where the alchemy of the distillery of our nervous system of consciousness, the reverberations then start to ripple out again to the constellations and to the whole human constellation, right? The whole of humanity. So there's this incredible oneness, of course, right? Of course. How could it be any other way? That the whole process is an intelligent process that is completely wise and nourishing itself. And that's where we start to really see that the integrative lived experience is the way, because we let the macro affect the micro. We let the play of life affect whatever is being stirred and discordant in us, and that the technology of love invites us to include it all, embrace it all, illuminate it without trying to fix or change it, like this, right? Let the dance of the shapes of the seeming limited play out, And as we see, we illuminate and we include, we embrace, and we bless and we bring everything that is seemingly divided and limited in the sense of my life to the divine life, right? How incredible the wisdom is, right? And so this then we come to see that, well, exactly, if I'm climbing a spiritual ladder and I'm full of righteousness and I'm trying to get away from the worldly life and I'm trying to get away from these things in my life without including them and joining and reconciling the heart, then how am I ever going to feel whole? How am I ever going to know wholeness if I've got these aspects of life that are divided, right? The reconciliation is in the heart. Let's say very clearly that the reconciliation isn't always in happy endings in the play of the story of life, right? Things don't always work out like fairy tale in the play of the world, right? And that's very important to recognize, because in a way, the happy ending, the real culmination of the fairy tale is, you know, it's the moment of the fairy tale, right? Where in the fairy tale, light overcomes dark, and dark is and light is the winner, right? But then in that there's still a dark. Or the handsome prince kisses the princess and she wakes up and then they get married and live happily ever after, right? But there's still division in those fairy tales, those kind of endings, that the true completion is the correction of the great misunderstanding that there's ever been division, the great seeing through the play of opposites. Let's say like a freeing of being entangled with the mind and being held captive by the mind and the collective consciousness, the collective mind that is divisive. That the true happy ending is the revelation of the timeless eternal truth. That there's only light, only love, and that the light and the dark, the good and the bad, the right and the wrong are all part of the karmic system, and that actually the one substance is light, is love, is innocence, where there's never been any division, there's never been any wrong, right? And in a way, in that revelation, there can't be anything to fix and change. It's the realization that what is veiling, what is obscuring this truth, it's the revelation, well, I am obscuring the me, the thought that I am separate is the obscuration, right? And so it's this giving the me to God, letting the me be consumed in the fire of the heart, letting the me be consumed and taken by the frequency of love into love. And so that the frequency of the lived experience isn't so much a frequency of fear and division, but is a frequency of love and openness and all-inclusiveness, and a natural witnessing of life, seeing, being the seer, the observer, the innocent observer of life. And the innocent observer just sees, right? So we could relate this now very simply to pure awareness. Pure awareness is just aware. Awareness is never touched by life. Awareness is just witnessing life. So we're opening through the unique ways that we are creating intelligently for ourselves to open. And so here comes another piece of this puzzle that's so important, is that we can also be living in this dance of comparison and competition, where if we're in comparison and competition, we're never actually really rooting in the fullness of our unique own unfolding without comparing and looking around to see, is my unfolding okay? Oh, I want it to be a bit more like that. So I'll do what they're doing. I'll follow that way. And if we're following and we're in this frequency of comparison and competition, that we don't fully embrace the life that we're being given as the most divine creation and intelligence that is the way to know ourselves, there can be this glorious avoidance of our own unique unfolding and the revelation that we are the intelligence that's creating. So when we are ready, as we are ready, we are creating the exact circumstances in the lived experience of life. So life is the way, as the guru is the grace. If we're looking like, oh, my life's a bit chunky over here, and it's not very exciting, or it's a little bit challenging, my family are just like, I'm not into it right now, the dynamics. So I want your experience. So I want to come over here. I want to know what you're reading, and I want to be with the teacher that you're with, and I want to have your experience, right? And you start to see how it's an avoidance of actually your own divine creation, your life, whether it involves family, children, difficulties, work situations, whatever it involves. It's about embracing it all, embracing the trickiness and the difficulties of your life is the way to actually come to a full loving embrace of yourself and reconcile all the pieces of yourself across multi-lifetime, multi-dimensional experientiality in this lifetime, to use the glory to collapse time and space into the ever-present now, collapse the play of karma into eternity, so that when the moment comes for the body costume to drop, that there's the possibility of making a departure gracefully, with the final breath being the love of God and the most holy surrender, so that the departure is without a return ticket, right? And that is the possible glory of a human life. And we go as far as we go, and we're ever evolving, and we're ever deepening. And we're at a time where the collective consciousness is so profoundly amplified and opening that there's a support of the whole collective and a shift that is in process for the whole realm of humanity. Let's say the whole frequency of humanity. Let's say the frequency of humanity in a certain way is a frequency of fear. The collective consciousness that we know as humanity is generally a frequency field of fear. And let's say that divinity is the frequency field of love. Now, in our humanness and as a field of humanity, we are completely wired. We're wired, absolutely set up and wired to remember our divinity fully in this lifetime. It's absolutely possible that we're wired for that. That is the intelligent process that life is, right? Did you get that? This is the intelligent process that life actually is. And when we fully embrace life as an intelligent process, we receive the glory. And when we receive the glory, we receive the living of life as an initiatory field of grace that is not only opening us to the lived experience of life being smoother and more gorgeous, we're actually refining the consciousness and refining and opening the dormant aspects of our consciousness so that we're able to start living at finer frequencies of consciousness than we've ever seen modeled to us before, We've seen glimpses here and there, but we can start to open to the possibility of consciousness and the field of consciousness refining to degrees that we have no way of being able to express and point to, but we allow the whole apparatus of our consciousness and nervous system to start to refine out of the density of the physicality and being bound by the karmic system and living in a dense frequency of mind, body, of physicality, of mental and emotional bondage, let's say, and veiling of what's true. So we start to shift the whole operating system from an operating system that is a fear-based operating system that the majority of humanity are living at, or let's say that humanity are living at, but there are humans within the field of humanity that are living at the frequency of divinity, living at the frequency of love. And where the beings all over the planet are living at that frequency and amplifying and uplifting that frequency, then that is transmitting and shifting the whole. And as we join with that frequency field in the most glorious ways. And then as a field of reality, as a field of divinity that's in the process of really opening to the finest possibilities of a human life, the dormant and untapped light codes on a cellular level, actually in our DNA, in our human DNA, and multidimensionally as light codes are being released and activated and coming online so that we can actually start to really recognize the intelligence that we are. And as we recognize the intelligence that we are, we start to reverberate and live at finer frequencies. And we really start to use this incredible possibility to open to the divine frequencies, and everything in the life starts to change. We start to be living at frequencies that pull forward the unconscious and effortlessly transmute the unconscious. We start blowing open all the doors and windows, and we start busting through the glass ceilings and breaking orbit out of what is known. And we start living as a revelatory field. And living at a revelatory field is living in constant revelation, being open to revelation, and allowing, guess what, life to be what points us to deeper revelation, right? So that this life is not about getting away from life, getting away from what's hard, and joining a kind of spiritual collective that's in protection and hiding, but actually being so deeply open to spirit that we have the capacity through our deepening and refinement and depth of presence of being to illuminate and meet all of life, to illuminate what seems to be dark and bring it through the alchemical process and magic of the nervous system, that our bodies start to refine and be these alchemical distilleries that transmute and activate and bless and just reverberate with nourishing, blissful frequencies that we drink in, that nourishes us, nourishes the field, nourishes the glory of divinity, right? We are feeding our bliss nectar into the reverberant, crystalline structures of integral wholeness and the flow of divine surrender and divine pure devotion, that we're entering this incredible self-sustaining alchemy of light, right? Wow, how beautiful. How beautiful is this life? Who would want to get away from a moment of this glorious life, right? Who would not want to drink in every glorious drop, however challenging it feels, right? To actually alchemically come to the revelation within our own system and lived experience multidimensionally in the realms of light and right here on the surface of life, that wow, it's all love. It's only ever been love. And that every being that we've ever known, loved, danced with is right here in the heart of love, in the fullness of the openness of our own heart, that we're in this knowing and we're being kind of cheered along, right? We're being so cheered along. There's so much support in the realms of light. We're so loved. We're so blessed. We're so held and supported because this is what we're here for. So again, here, instead of getting away, we start to really embrace the glory of life, the divinity of life, the grace of life, and we open more to the intelligence and our natural intuitive capacity, and we open to the guidance and grace of divinity, that the glory is here showing us how. The glory is here showing us how through the play of life. So we recognize, okay, great glory, whether we call that Mother, Shiva, Yeshua, the Lord, love, Krishna, whatever we call that, God, whatever we call that, we say, I see your grace. Thank you. Or right now, I don't feel very grateful, but I know this is your grace. And I will stay here, and I will include and I will receive with the great possibility of seeing through the veil of my own protection and conditioning and truly coming to the revelation in this heart of the grace that this life is, and to really be able to drink in the nectar, right? So then as these words are coming, you start to feel that there's not a teaching, that it's an alive field, that it's spontaneously arising, and that we as a field are bringing this forward, right? We as a field, the field itself is an intelligent field that's activating and initiating itself to go deeper, to refine, reorganize, reorchestrate, and recalibrate in all the most profound ways that we couldn't even begin to imagine, that we're opening. And so as the words come, it's just to attune to where you feel the yes, where you feel the intelligence coming alive in your system. And the great glorious yes of your heart is the attunement and the aliveness that recognizes your oneness and our joining. And as we are recognizing this reverberant field, we're all being shifted and nourished deeply. And there's healing happening where the light starts to come in more profound ways. And let's speak to this right now. Let's see what is here right now. Well, immediately what presents itself is a fine frequencies of light of the mother, of just what we are speaking of, the all-embracing love of the mother that says, yes, I am here. I am here. I'm always here, never apart, right? So just letting those fine frequencies be felt as an attunement, as subtle frequency fields that you might feel actually kind of alive and buzzing through your whole body and around your body. You might not feel anything. You might feel it or see it as a sense of seeing or feeling light entering you. You might feel it entering from above or around the head. You might feel it more as an explosion in the heart. You might also feel it just as an aliveness in the belly, that mother consciousness. And you might have your own unique way of noticing that there's such a loving, gracious, all-encompassing support, a holding that is here. So just in the presence of these fine frequencies, it's like this transmutation naturally happens because in the presence of a finer frequency, these patterns of discordance, of division, limitation, they're just drawn like moths to a flame, just drawn to the frequency, like just laying down, like with their head in the lap of the mother and just being like, just held, right? Just being held. That there's nothing to do, nothing to fix, and just such a power of light, but such a softness, a relaxation. That relaxation of mother is here, mother is home, right? So just such a swelling, swooning flood of all-encompassing love, powerful, brilliant, like integrally whole, and yet soft and gentle. Being touched by grace. And this being touched by grace brings a deepening revelation in the heart of how all of life is grace. Like a deeper seeing, like an attunement and an ability to see more clearly at a frequency level. All of life is grace. All of life is grace. So just being this open, receptive field, nothing to do, nothing to fix or change. You are not broken. And yet any part that feels to be broken is now being received fully, just as it is. Any parts that feel to be dark or challenging, all being received and illuminated in the light. No fixing, no changing. An all-encompassing love that's just including everything at a frequency level, as if this great frequency of the mother says, I only see light, I see only love. Nothing else, nothing else. And in that true seeing, right, the true seeing allows that which has wanted to be seen. It actually allows those places to be seen. Those places are being seen. They're being seen in the light. They're not being seen in the egoic ways that they may like to be seen, but they're being seen in the light. They're being seen in the brilliance and revelation of true nature, right? Where love sees only love. Love sees how sincere every being is, how every being is always only ever trying their best, giving it all, whatever that looks like. There's nothing else happening. There's no one failing or getting it wrong. And so love sees that, and love embraces whatever, with no judgment, no agenda, no imposition, just an all-encompassing seeing, which is a frequency field that allows these places that long to be seen to actually be seen. You are seen in the light of true nature. You are held, you are loved, you are blessed beyond words. And there's this beauty and softness that is starting to permeate through the multidimensional layers of body that you might be able to feel, like a relaxation and a letting go, and at the same time a widening and an expanding and a burning up of the foggy veils that have seemed to obscure, and a clear vision, like a clear vision field where the knowing of the heart is alive. And just in the knowing that this presence, this being, just this is it all. This is the all that is. Just this. And receiving then the frequencies of love, of holding, of softness, tenderness, as deeply as they can go in this moment. To know that it's an ongoing, an incredibly wise and intelligent process that is constantly happening, and it's what we call life. And so to take part, be fully engaged and embodied in life is the way, is the truth, right? Life itself. So just resting here in this wide open field of glory, where the heart knows nothing else is needed. The sense of just being one with God, with love, with the mother, with the glory. And then just watch the unfolding of life. Just watch the magic unfold. That this field of love is a frequency field of the miraculous. Right? That we don't need to know how. We can't know how. We can't understand. But the deeper that we rest here, we start to really see the magic of the intelligence. And we live in this awe and wonder. And we realize this is the frequency of innocence. This is the frequency of love and openness. And how glorious it is to be here.